Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. I decided to switch the camera angle. I don't know if it's better or not, but kind of switching it up for fun. But nonetheless, let's jump into it. Let's talk about what happened in Tesla today, what can we expect for tomorrow and the rest of the week. Of course, there's only 2 days left. Don't forget, again, Monday was, of course, an off day, as I'm sure you remember. And no, but nonetheless, jumping right into it, Tesla ending the day at pretty much exactly $740 almost, up 33 cents. Which is a drop of 2.36%, which isn't too bad. So let's talk about what happened, what we can expect, all that good stuff. So yeah, so overall, not a bad day. Again, nothing that should be surprising, right? I mean, more or less, I've been talking about how I predict an overall, drop. Again, there was definitely a chance that we didn't really drop too much at all. There's definitely a chance we could have just went straight sideways here, got, narrow, and then just shot up. That definitely was possible. But you can see I have this red line drawn here that we kind of broke under. So we started here pretty much, right? Boom, boom, boom. So this was, I think I drew this on the 30-minute or the 1 hour. I can't remember, but 30 minutes good enough. But the idea is the fact that, we started here, we kind of ran up. Right, it had this kind of higher lows being set, started setting a slightly lower lows here as well, or lower highs rather, and then we pretty much fell under with this massive candle right here, came back, retested, ended up becoming resistance, and we continued selling off, and then we kind of bounced off this general 730-ish level, and we're still maintaining above it, which is pretty good. So what can we expect, going into again tomorrow, Friday? So in my opinion, there's two things. I mean, the classic, it can go up or it can go down, but that's essentially what it is, right? It can go up or it can go down. So let's figure out what makes it go up and what makes it go down. That's the most important part. So let's go to the 1 hour. I like the 1 hour more personally. So on the 1 hour, you see, essentially, we can either drop at least, in my opinion, back to 720. Again, for some reason, I told you how yesterday, for some reason, I just don't think we're going to be gap filling. I really don't. And one of the reasons is because there's still a technical chance that the SPY drops a bit here as well. But the SPY is also kind of in this uptrend, which I wouldn't be too surprised if the SPY comes down to potentially maybe 40, high 407s to 408 relatively soon, maybe even tomorrow, probably tomorrow, and then probably bounce off of that. There's a chance we go a little bit lower, maybe to 406, and then kind of get sucked back up and kind of maintain inside this kind of almost like a uptrend that we're in with the SPY. You can see here similar to SPY break over here, you can see as well though, but nonetheless, we're essentially in this little kind of uptrend, if you will. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we kind of potentially fall down a little bit, kind of get sucked back up, and essentially more or less maintain this overall uptrend. The VIX, you can see kind of bounced off of this level, went all the way up, which is actually exactly what I predicted. I actually predicted, I mean, I didn't say an exact level, maybe I did, I can't remember, but nonetheless, I did say that I wouldn't be surprised if we have a bounce up here. Now the thing is that when the VIX dropped this hard, we didn't actually really rally as hard as I thought we would, but nonetheless, the point is the fact that the VIX did find more resistance, which is great. What we really need is a break in the VIX underneath this level. We really need this kind of 25.5-ish level to really just collapse. And then once that collapses, and once the VIX essentially starts really entering this box, essentially, that's when we can really start seeing a rally, which can definitely happen maybe Thursday, maybe Friday, maybe early next week. But I don't think it'll take too long. I think it'll be within the next few days at most. But that's essentially kind of, similar to Tesla, because Tesla will, of course, react accordingly as well. So essentially for Tesla, again, I wouldn't be too surprised. We're essentially forming this kind of, if we go on the 15-minute, let's say, we are essentially kind of forming this bull flag-ish, if you will, where I wouldn't be surprised, actually, I like the 1 hour still, where I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of, make one more lower low potentially, right? So we kind of ran up over here. Now we're kind of setting up a bull flag. It's hard to count this as part of the bull flag in terms of the first touch point downside. So I would personally wouldn't be surprised if we kind of, go downwards like this, and then make one more lower low, potentially even at this 720 level, which kind of is decent support and resistance. So you can see here, right, several times you kind of bounce around this kind of 720 level, even over here. I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of go close to 720, where I have deployed some cash already around the 730s. But I still have some cash left over just in case we actually do come down to 720s, and maybe even, all the way to the gap fill, which again, I don't think will happen just yet. It's possible. I wouldn't rule it out entirely. And I have cash ready as well if it does, because it's a backup plan, if you will. But my goal right now is I put in some money, about a third of what I want to put in, right around this level that we're at right now, pretty much exactly more or less around this level. And then I'll put in more if we go to 720. And then I'll put in a bit more if we go down to this gap fill, you know, in the very low 700s, which again, I'm personally expecting to hold, but we'll see what happens. But I just based on the way it's forming, I really don't think we'll break much lower than that. So the one thing you want to look out for, and I said this before, is ideally we want 700 to hold and especially 680. But if we even drop to 680 at this point, it's already looking a little bit weird. But that's like the last line in my opinion before like everything falls apart and all the patterns, all the setup and everything just kind of looks atrocious. Ideally though, I want 700 to hold. That's like ideal, like that's the ideal scenario. That's like the not like best case. The best case scenario would be just so even just hold here, but like the ideal best case scenario, like the the realistic best case scenario would just be a 700, no less than 700 drop. That's what I really don't want to see, and especially 680, right? So those are the levels I will still watch out for in case that you're worried about like, oh, how is this going to lead potentially all the way to the downside? What's going to make us just completely plummet? Probably a break of one of those two levels, and especially 680. So keep that in mind. But for the upside, we're essentially again still overall in this kind of red line uptrend or downtrend rather. So you want to pretty much break that level, right? And in this case, what that would mean is the fact that we would essentially want to sometime maybe this week even pretty much go back above 760. Let's just say 760 is a very safe way to put it. Maybe even 755 to 760, somewhere in that range. We want to start looking to break that kind of level and start maintaining that level. So the easiest way to think about it, for simplicity's sake, is 760. If we can get above 760 again and actually hold this time, I do think that that's going to be extremely bullish and potentially finally rally us up, maybe even up to like the somewhere in the 800s for sure. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in terms of a break to the upside. But again, we're essentially still setting up the overall bullish patterns that I've been talking about for a few days. We have the cup and handle pattern here, where now we're essentially the neckline is essentially this kind of like 780-ish level, and now we're essentially forming the handle, which also in turn happens to be kind of like a bull flag, right? Where we're essentially forming something like this, like give or take. Like again, this is just like a very rough way of putting it, but something like this you can say, give or take, right? That's kind of the general idea. But essentially what you also want to see is a break of this line here and then ultimately this red line here. But you want to see both of these break to really start seeing a nice run to the upside, which I think is definitely possible, which kind of lines up with how I think the SPY and the QQQ are kind of playing out and looking and everything like that. But the reason I don't think Tesla is going to gap fill, and the reason I don't think we actually might get all the way down to 707 is because it just doesn't seem like there's that much like room to the downside left for the SPY. And if there is, then that's already kind of a bad sign to begin with anyways. So that's why I'm kind of not expecting a drop that far for Tesla, but you never know with Tesla. Sometimes Tesla moves in its own cadence. Sometimes it's in its own little world, regardless of what the indices are doing. So you never really know with Tesla. That's the thing. It's like an indice in its own. Sometimes it feels like, but nonetheless, I am overall feeling good. Again, today's drop shouldn't be too much of a concern, in my opinion, if you've been listening and following and what I've been saying and whatnot, not financial advice. It shouldn't be too much of an issue or worry or whatever. It should be expected, in my opinion, right? So you guys hopefully are seeing this drop and are thinking like, yeah, okay, cool. We expected this, no issues, not worried, not panicking. We're chilling. And again, I think we're definitely chilling as long as especially 700 holds. I think, shouldn't be too worried, but ideally, I think we can also potentially just straight up bounce off this kind of 720 and 722 level. And potentially that could be the quote unquote temporary bottom before this next kind of leg up starts, which also is extremely possible in my opinion. So that's kind of the things I'm personally looking out for. So one thing we can also take a look at, of course, as usual, is going to be the good old Bollinger Band. So you can see here, let's take a look. Let's zoom in over here on the daily, of course, right? I like the Bollinger Bands on the daily. It's not bad. So we'll take a look at it on the 1 hour as well. But you can see here, we did get rejected by the white part of the line, the middle part, the median, if you will. Kind of ended pretty much right at it, and then we did kind of fall below it. Now we're definitely below it. So it is showing some rejection. So another thing would be a close above the white line of the Bollinger Band, which is essentially would be somewhere around that kind of 755 to 760 level. Pretty much lines up with that perfectly. So that's essentially the level that you want to be looking out for right now in terms of maintaining and showing strength around and above that level to get a good sign of a reversal. Looking at on the 1 hour, you can see here it got a little bit tight, then kind of exploded to the upside. Now we're slowly forming a little bit of tightness here again, as usual, as it usually does before the next move, the next big move at least. So that's something else to keep in mind as well, which is also another reason why I don't think we'll go all the way down. Again, we might, I just don't think we will, because I do think that the second we start breaking up around this level, the second the SPY starts breaking above this kind of 412 and a half level, the second those start breaking, the move upwards can be pretty quick and violent. So it feels hard to believe that we're potentially going to drop all the way down here, because then that would essentially mean that we'd have to kind of drop down. That would be essentially the quote unquote big move down temporarily, because even just that alone would be what, like pretty much a like almost a 5% move. Like that's a decent move, right? So yeah, and then we maybe we can do that and then consolidate a bit and then rally up. That's definitely possible. But if I had to put my money where my mouth is, if you will, I don't think we'll drop too far below what we have today. Again, I think maybe 722 at worst right now, realistically, and then we bounce off of that. That's kind of what I'm personally projecting. But again, even if we do drop all the way to the gap fill, I still think that's perfectly fine as long as ideally 700 holds. And that still overall sets up, you know, the cup and handle, the inverted head and shoulders patterns and everything like that. So I think we're chilling. I'm not too worried, guys. I'm not worried at all. Let's just say that. I don't know. So if I'm worried and if I'm not liking something and if I think something has broken or something's just not looking, you know, too good or too bueno, let's say, I'll speak up, of course. I'll let you guys know. You know, I'm trying to be transparent here. You know, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll let you know if something suddenly changes. Another thing to note is the volume is definitely a little bit lower, but it is a volume, a red day rather. So a lower volume on a red day, in my opinion, also a good sign. That just implies that there's not a lot of selling happening, and it's just kind of, you know, there's still a little bit of selling, obviously, but the point is that there's not too much selling. The volume is not increasing in the red above the green by much. If anything, it's actually lower, which is good, which tells me that this is essentially just an accumulation phase, and we're essentially pretty much getting ready to make the next leg up. So that's essentially what I'm currently seeing, guys. I'm feeling good. I'm not feeling too worried. I think we're just preparing the jets, if you will. And yeah, I'm not too worried. So we'll see what happens. But again, guys, you know, something happens, if something breaks that I don't want to see break, again, at the moment, pretty much the 700 level, then that's when, you know, you might want to start rethinking the game plan, if you will. But other than that, that's all I'm thinking for now, guys. That's what I'm seeing. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll see you for tomorrow's video. Peace.